I survived both Tropical Storm Debbie, as it was when it rolled through here, and back to school, so sorry about getting to this late, but let's answer questions that $5 supporters asked in July. If you have questions for August, links are below. Let's start on Subscribestar, where FunwithFacts asks, Hi Shane, how do you think the world can raise fertility rates and prevent a major crisis in the coming decades? I'm not at all sure it needs to. I think the fertility crisis is as contrived as the overpopulation crisis. The best thing that can be done for this is stop the government monkeying with the economy, because with a healthy economy, fertility rates converge on 2 per couple. Let's get a few things out of the way quickly. Sperm counts are not dropping. Birth control does not damage long-term fertility. Stress doesn't cause infertility. And vaccines don't make you infertile, not even the COVID vaccine. World population won't be dropping, Japan won't cease to exist, the US won't cease to exist, none of this is going to happen. Population size isn't really a good indicator of anything anyway. They used to think that more people meant dividing more of society's resources. That was wrong because people became more productive. Having fewer people isn't an issue for the same reason. Increased productivity makes for better per capita well-being, regardless of what the overall population levels are doing. I'll refer you back to my answer to Thomas Urbanski's question back in June of 2022 on population growth and reproductive strategies and their relationship to economics. What makes things work out best is to leave it to everyone to decide for themselves what's best for their lives, including the choice of whether or not to have kids and how long to wait to have them. If couples want to be dinks for a while and people are living longer overall, what could possibly be bad about that? Dickin Myanus asks, I believe you mentioned a couple of times along the years that you live on a farm. Do you grow your own food or partially grow your own food? I grew up on a farm, but I don't live on one, and I never spent my adult years on one. By the time I came around, most of the family farm had been reduced to breeding beef cattle and harvesting wood for lumber, and related activities like baling hay. We also had a garden where we grew miscellaneous food that we ate, corn, tomatoes, things like that, as well as a strawberry patch, and grape and muscadine vines, as well as apple and crabapple trees. That was a lot of work in my childhood through teenage years. But in my adult life, I'm just a good old capitalist consumer. Over on Patreon, Darth Vega asks, Colion Noir says we need the law that says you cannot sue a gun manufacturer if a criminal uses one of their products to commit a crime. How would this kind of situation be handled in an ancap society? It's a very simple principle. Individuals are responsible for their own actions, not the actions of others. So no producer can be held responsible for the actions of their consumers. With certain exceptions, such as if they're colluding directly with a criminal activity. This is actually long-standing common law. It's had all sorts of names, such as innocent facilitator or innocent intermediary. In the UK, it's known as mere facilitation. In terms of communications, it became called neutral platform or mere conduit. The idea is that if a telephone company sells you phone service and you use that service to call someone else to plan out a crime, the telco isn't responsible. That was codified into law in the Telecommunications Act. More recently, with the internet, it was codified as Title 47, Section 230. I have several videos on that and I've made a playlist to them, so I'll link to that in the description. The idea is that websites, ISPs, social media companies, and hosting providers aren't responsible for the things that their users post. The law that Colion Noir is talking about is the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act. But as we saw with the Sandy Hook plaintiffs suing Remington, it's not really a defense against a corrupt court that allowed them to sue Remington into bankruptcy when the case should never have been let through the door. Imagine if someone brought Ford Motor Company into court because some nut drove an F-150 through a crowded shopping mall. The case would be laughed out of the room in 2 seconds, both here and in an ANCAP society. If you think it should be any different with firearms, I humbly suggest a rethink is in order. I mean, this even makes sense to Bernie Sanders, who said, quote, If somebody has a gun and it falls into the hands of a murderer and the murderer kills somebody with a gun, do you hold the gun manufacturer responsible? Not any more than you would hold a hammer company responsible if somebody beats somebody over the head with a hammer. It's all about preventing something known as regulation through litigation, where you try to do in the judicial branch what properly belongs to the legislative, or what properly belongs nowhere in an ANCAP society. And we've seen a ton of examples of this, like when companies that made silicone breast implants were sued under the completely false myth that they could leak, or pharmaceutical companies sued because they make opioids, or vaccine injury cases, cell phone radiation, glyphosate, all sorts of examples. These would all be laughed out of the room in any sensibly run society. But the unique incentives of government-run courts make these far more the norm than they otherwise would be. The fact that laws like Section 230 and the PLCAA have to be passed at all is a testament to the cultish irrationality of government. And finally, Anon Donor asks, what are your thoughts about the claims on what is called American Car Dependency, and should you feel that something should be done about it? This is some major collectivist bogosity right here. Collectivists hate the freedom that cars give to individuals. They're the kind that want to pass crap like so-called traffic calming laws to make driving as much of a nuisance as they can to discourage more people from doing so. And the goal is nothing more than collectivizing people, shoving them all into the routine of mass transit and the commonality of living places and desirable destinations. It's another big symptom of the urban-rural divide. People who live in a population-dense place can easily imagine walking to where they need to be or taking mass transit. People in rural areas or even suburbs don't really have that option. I've posted statistics several times in the past showing how even the poor in the United States are better off than the average person in Western Europe by every conceivable metric. There are a number of reasons for this, but the availability of cars, even to low-income people, is a big one. Having a car means you have more opportunities for employment, or for entrepreneurship, or for obtaining goods and services across a wider area. You can more easily manage a family. Also, the screeching of "just walk everywhere" doesn't work with people who have permanent injuries or disabilities, or as people become elderly. On a larger scale, mass transit means you either force everyone to do things in a certain pre-planned way, or, more likely, you end up with obsolete stops at empty buildings because people have decided they'd rather do things somewhere else. You end up with a combination of some parts of the system being overstressed and others massively underutilized until it collapses economically. Or, you allow a city to grow naturally and organically. You allow people to decide where they will live, where they will work, where they will shop, and don't try to force your ideas of what a city should be on them. Instead of waiting 15 to 20 minutes on a bus or a train that then takes you half an hour or more to get to where you want to go, if there's even a bus running at the time, you can instead get in your car and be there in a few minutes. And that's especially the case if you're the weirdo, the misfit, the nonconformist, the one wanting to go to the out-of-the-way places, the less popular places, the places with niche interests, where cars let your fellow weirdos gather without having to have the blessing of the central planner or the agreement of the rich and popular, and without having to be branded a malcontent. Just ask them one question. Why is dependency on mass transit any better than dependency on a car? Especially given all of the unique benefits a car gives you, and doubly especially that mass transit makes you dependent on government, which, make no mistake, is their real goal. So, thanks so much for watching. Comments for the comment god, shares for the share throne. Please hit like, subscribe, and the bell, and check out other videos on my channel and like and share them as well. And, of course, go to donate.bogosity.tv for all sorts of ways to support, including PayPal, Venmo, and various cryptocurrencies, or become a regular supporter at Patreon, Subscribestar, and Discord to get these videos early and ad-free and participate in live streams and AMAs like this one. Thanks again, and until next time, stay strong and be free.